Hey, y'all, this is Troy, and I've got my friend Ryan with me. You're watching Filibusted. We're going to be going through the topic, is Candace Owens right or wrong about the Charlie Kirk assassination? She's made some pretty wild implications involving who's behind the murder, who's behind the shooter, also some implications about Charlie himself, some changes of view that he might have had right before he died, the last couple of months of his life. And a lot of people have been kind of playing the blame game, and people have been saying some nasty things about Candace. Are they right? Are they wrong? Me and Ryan are going to attempt to the best of our ability to go through all of the evidence, all of the details, and we've got a lot for you today. We're going to be breaking this thing down, but we're going to try to do that without bias if possible. Now, everybody comes with a bias, right? But we're gonna try to be as gracious as possible and as unbiased as we possibly can be, because we want to give her the benefit of the doubt in any way that we can, and we just want to look at the evidence, and then we want to let you decide what you believe about it. So let us know in the comments what you think after you get a chance to listen to both sides. But essentially,
can I make a quick disclaimer before you jump in?
Yeah.
I didn't say that. I didn't tell you beforehand, but I just want everybody to know that, we don't want to be insensitive to the situation and the recency of Charlie's passing. But there's a lot of questions around this, and people are wondering what's going on. And so it's why we think it's important to discuss it now. This isn't about clicks or writing anything at all. This is about, there are people that have questions. These are big questions, and how do we navigate those and think about those? And so that's why the timing of this, I really wanted to push this out a few weeks, but there's just an urgency here in the culture and what people are talking about and asking. So that's why we feel it's important to address it now.
Yeah, so we're going to start here. Breaking: Candace Owens threatens to destroy TPUSA if it promotes anything that she disagrees with. Obviously, that's this ex-user's opinion. But essentially, they're saying she's trying to control TPUSA and Charlie's legacy while blaming others for doing the same thing. That's what she's been accused of. We're going to look and see, is that true today or not? So I watched this episode from Candace this week, Who Ordered the Hit on Charlie Kirk, episode 237. And I watched her talk about the text transcripts between the shooter and his boyfriend. And I'm going to say, I think she did a good job of breaking that down. I'll just say that, because we're trying to look at this, just what is the evidence? We're trying to weigh that. And I think she breaks it down well. It does seem strange, some of the things. Now, me and my wife had a conversation about the text messages earlier. And, one of the things that came up in that conversation was the fact that, well, you don't always talk while you're writing the same way you talk while you're talking out loud. So I think we need to consider that. And I don't think that's something that Candace considered, is that, yeah, he was a 22-year-old, or he is, but maybe, he was an avid reader. Maybe he was a loner. Maybe he had a different speech, pattern than normal 22-year-olds today, and a lot of times you just type things differently than you talk, but maybe that doesn't come into play here. I think we would need to actually look at the evidence of what are the other text messages that he was sending. What does that look like? But I think she's onto something here. There's enough weird stuff going on with the text messages and with the amount of details they put in there that it seems not normal, right? She does a good job of breaking that down. But I think she may be off in this video on not the details of that, but maybe on the conclusion she arrives at the end. And I'm going to leave that up to you to decide whether you think she is or not. I kind of feel like she is. She may be, but I think she's found some strange stuff, but she doesn't necessarily prove the end allegation that she makes. I'm going to go through her solid points and then her not so solid points and then her conclusions. Okay. Here are the solid points. These are the things I feel like were the strongest in this video. She makes a point about him wearing the same outfit for over a day, and that being weird, like 24 to 48 hours, something like that. I think that's a pretty good point. Another point she makes is about his home being raided and then, quote unquote, wrapping it up a few hours later. They're just done. Like, yay, we raided it. We got everything. That's a pretty good point, right? It didn't take them very long. They seem to be protecting the other guy, Lance. They didn't raid his home. Even, I think she talked to Lance's family. His family thinks it's strange that the feds moved on from him so quickly. That's a great point. I think that's solid. The fact that the FBI announced, and many of y'all have seen this, I think last night, the FBI said, and this was not in her video because it came out afterwards, but they said, we have finished the investigation. We wrapping it up, I think that leads credence to the idea that something else is going on. I mean, it's like so soon they're done. They've everything.
See here. Let's move on.
Every avenue.
Lone Ranger.
Investigated. And I'm like, well, that's strange. It's strange, right? Here's what I felt like were not so solid points in her video. she keeps referencing a source who is giving her extra information. She'll say, but I have a source who I'm not going to name. And I feel like that is a extremely convenient way to connect dots from one thing to the next. Be like, now there's no evidence here, but my source tells me. And it's like, well, hey, here's the thing. She might be telling the truth, but some people would use that as a way to connect dots. So that depends on if you trust what she's saying or not. I feel like it's not evidence. It's conjecture, or and it's like it is a testimony. It's a second person once removed testimony. It's not straight evidence. So it's not a solid point. But she also says there were two different people there, and they were protecting the second guy. And here's her reason for believing that. Her main reason, she says, and I'm quoting, "It's a gut thing. I don't know, but I know. I don't know, but I know." So it's very strange that she says there was a second person there and they're protecting him. And then the evidence she provides for that, and the main evidence is she feels it in her gut. I'm saying, hey, you might be right. You might have a good, you might be right about that gut feeling, but I would like to see the evidence. I think it'd be a lot stronger if you presented the evidence. She did, however, release a photo of Tyler Robinson at a Dairy Queen that was about 15 to 17 minutes from the campus. So I'm going to show this picture here. This is a photo that Candace Owens released online, and it's taken at a Dairy Queen at 6:38 p.m. I think it was 6 hours after the shooting. And they're saying people are saying Candace is right. Candace has been vindicated because they're seeing Tyler Robinson. He doesn't look that shooken up. He looks normal, and he's just not covering his face. He's just ordering food at a Dairy Queen, right? And it's only 15 to 17 minutes from campus. So that would correlate with her theory, right? But there's a piece of problem with this evidence that Candace has released. And I think this photo here that she released is not a solid point either. And here's why. So let's look at this. Josh Boswell broke this down, and he says about this, he said, the staff there just told me something isn't right. And he goes through it, and he says that the staff actually said at the Dairy Queen that Candace Owens references at this location, said they did not see him. All the ones that were working there, they did not see him at all. And they said this Superman poster in the back, they haven't had that at that Dairy Queen in months. So they said this is either an old photo or a doctored photo. So they're saying the photo evidence is not right. He literally called the staff and said who was working and talked to them. Now, they did say there's another Dairy Queen in the area that may still have the Superman photos, right? And that may be it. So that either way, it's one part of the evidence is not completely right. So even if it was that, but Josh Boswell is asking the question and saying there's something fishy going here. He's not so sure about this one after looking into it.
It's not a slam dunk. He's saying
it's
there's other questions you would need to answer to confirm it, really, is what he's saying. I mean, because you could get footage on both sides of that and see if the thing was there from that play. I mean, if the FBI was interested, they could do that, or police or anybody.
So it could be confirming evidence, but it's got some holes at the moment. Okay. Here's the conclusion she comes to in that video. She believes there is a federal level of conspiracy and cover-up happening, regarding the Charlie Kirk assassination. And I would say, and this is where I want you to weigh in, Ryan, with what you know and what stance you have right now. I think there could be. But I would say this, but there doesn't have to be. I think there could be, and I think there's some weird fishy evidence. There's stuff that points to it, but there doesn't have to be, because coincidences do exist in the world that we live in. And I would say this is where I differ from Candace when she comes to her conclusions is she says, this is the way it is, and there's no other option. And I'm saying, well, technically it doesn't have to be that. Like, it could be, but it doesn't have to be. What do you think, Ryan?
Well, I think that we have a lot of unanswered questions, and I'm very disappointed to hear if the FBI is going to say this is case closed, as though it's almost like every piece of information they give, it raises 100 more questions in my mind, and it raises more questions than it answers, and it even is suspicious, because like if they had said nothing, okay, then they found the guy the next day and they arrested him at 10 a.m. the night before. Okay, but they twice came and said they had suspects, and then they released him, and they had a suspect, and they really, like, I heard other investigators and people say, like, they've never heard anybody give that much attention to a suspect that was arrested before and detained like that. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then they come out without timestamps on some things and timestamps on other things. And so for me, there's a lot of questions, and we have, people all over. I've seen ballistics experts looking at the details of the shooting and how it happened and the flight pattern and the wound. And I mean, just there's all kinds of questions that,
Right.
you know, timelines in the video and like the where was the gun and when did he didn't have it with him, or like, I mean, there's so many questions in alibi, and they say, oh, there's no one else we need to investigate, even though they just in the sentence before said he put out a message to many different people on a Discord. Like, what in the world? Like, there are so many questions. So, you know, whether it's a cover up or just extremely sloppy, or, you know, I don't know. But what I can say is it's very unsatisfying what they've shared so far, and it does not give confidence in other things that they're doing as well. So that's my initial take. What actually is going on behind it, that's a whole nother conversation. And you know, whether people are saying whether he could have even like physically made that shot because of a building in between this. And like, so I don't know. There's lots of questions. We're not getting a lot of good answers. We're kind of just getting more questions.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm not saying that there's not a conspiracy or cover up happening. I'm just saying we need to see the evidence. You know, that's what I'm saying. Before I would say 100% that's true, I need to see more evidence. But I'm saying it could be, right? All right. Well, one of the things Stephen Gardner said was, he was like, we as the public, we are so used to the true crime documentary series that we want to see that. We want to see the FBI lay it all out. He said, and that's just not the way they work. They don't give the public access to, here's all the strings of information. They release certain things. And he said, but the rest of it gets released at a later date. And so he said, that's what we're going to have to wait for, probably, unless, you know, somebody like Candace Owens or somebody else uncovers something that is completely condemning, you know. But let's move on to her next conclusion. Okay. So in this video, she makes that conclusion that there's a federal level conspiracy and cover up. She also claims the truth is coming out about Charlie's mindset, about Israel and Netanyahu. And she says that is why Israel is behind this. So here's the thing. That's her conclusion. That's why Israel is behind. And I would say there's evidence that Charlie was asking questions. Absolutely. We're going to go through that. There's evidence that he was getting pressured by donors. Absolutely. But to say that is, you know, to try to assert that that's proof that Israel is behind it, it's like, you can ask the question. Absolutely. But you know what? I don't think it's not proof to me. You know, that's not it's some evidence, but it's not necessarily proof. It does show maybe some suspicion. She also claims that Netanyahu lied about Charlie Kirk after his death. And I think that could easily be true. Now, let me know what you think, Ryan. I think that could be true because he's already in a rough spot in the public eye. He could have been trying to use this to get on the public's good side. Sure. Right. I'm an Israel supporter, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with everything someone like Netanyahu does. Right. You know, the same here in the States. We have elected some bad presidents over the years. Right. But that doesn't mean I stop supporting America, you know, and the people of America just because we have a bad president. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Well, I would say, you know, in general, her frustration was that he took advantage of the situation, Netanyahu, and that he mischaracterized the letter. Now, I don't know what was in the letter. I don't know if he mischaracterized it. If he did do that, that is obviously that is just incredibly inappropriate and unacceptable. I don't know if that was true or not. I understand there was pressure to go there, but I will say that mostly what I saw, because there's an interview between Megyn Kelly's channel between her and Charlie Kirk, which I'm sure you're going to talk about, but where he expresses a lot of frustration. And I will say that the frustration in that, it seemed to me pretty evident that it was not with Israel itself. It was with the fact that you can't even have a conversation about Israel critically thinking without donors and without everybody jumping down their throat and attacking his character. So for me, like, they jumped him just for having, I think, Dave Smith and Josh Hammer to have a debate. And so usually if I want to defend something, I will have a debate and I would flesh it out so that we have an even more robust defense of something, not attack people that are trying to do that. And so for me, that's kind of a little bit telling. That's very odd. And so he was attacked and his character was attacked. That's what his frustration was. Just because they want to have a debate and have Tucker or Dave Smith or whoever, whether you agree with them or not, come and refute them. And that's what it should be. So that was his frustration. It wasn't really Israel at all. So I wouldn't characterize it as changing heart.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to get into some more of that in a little bit. The next thing we're going to share is Tucker Carlson's opinion on this matter and how it relates to what Candace Owens is saying. But before that, we're going to hear a short message from our sponsor. Investing can be confusing and scary, but it doesn't have to be. Genesis Gold Group takes the guessing out of the game and guides you on your gold investment journey. We at Filibusted love the genius design of the Prepper Bar, which breaks up into sections, kind of like a chocolate bar. But if you prefer high security insured gold storage, they have that too. And unlike Fort Knox, the gold is actually there, 100% owned by you. So don't wait to get started. Visit filibustedgold.com today for a free investment guide from Genesis Gold Group. So thank you to our sponsor, Genesis Gold Group. Y'all go check that out if you're interested. But I said this was going to be a big breakdown, right? And so we're scratching the surface right now. So this is Candace Owens, who ordered the hit on Charlie Kirk. She plays this clip from Tucker Carlson, right? And she claims that Tucker Carlson shreds Netanyahu's lie about Charlie, okay? And she's referencing Netanyahu's post. Here's one of his posts, and I think this one was a little bit later, not his first one, but about Charlie Kirk after he was murdered. So you can see a lot coming from that side and coming from both sides. But Tucker says basically made it all about Netanyahu. He made it all about him and his country immediately. And he says attacking Netanyahu is not the same as attacking Israel. I think that's a pretty good point. I agree that's generally true. He says Charlie was above all resentful. And this is where I'm like, I'm starting to question it. And I'm going to show you all the evidence later and let y'all decide what you think. I'm not going to try to persuade you. I'm just going to show both sides. He says Charlie was above all resentful that Netanyahu was using the United States to process his wars. He expressed that to me and a lot of other people. Enough text messages exist that it can probably be verified in pretty short order. He was dependent to a great extent on his donors. And so I think even if he's wrong about the phrase, he was above all resentful. It's like, could he be swinging this in the way he says it since Charlie's not here to defend himself? Sure, he could be. Is it true that, Charlie was upset about this? Possibly, probably, it's like, it seems likely, but another thing he mentions is 2 days before he died, Charlie lost a $2 million donation because he pledged to bring Tucker Carlson to the next TPUSA conference. So he was taking donation hits just for having Tucker Carlson around. Like, that's just the truth of it, I want
to say for me, the big highlight here is, not what Charlie thought about Israel. To me, the big highlight here is how much Charlie was open to not being controlled, and he was going to do what he wanted to do and what he felt the Lord God, Jesus Christ, gave him to do. And that is that, even if it costs millions of dollars. And that is that for me, that is the truth.
He was going to stick to his convictions and he wasn't going to be put into a box, so, right. And I respect that. This is the last thing he says. Tucker Carlson says, he says, I'm not accusing anyone of being involved in that murder. So I respect Tucker Carlson for saying that, because I think that needs to be said.
Clarifying.
He's clarifying that. And I think that needs to be said. Now the main thing he was saying here is he was attempting to break down what Netanyahu said about Charlie Kirk after he died. But let's look at what Charlie Kirk has said, okay, about Israel, about Jewish donors, things like that. Okay, let's look at this. I want
to make one quick statement. I'm going to have to jump in a couple minutes. I just want to say real quick that I do give a little bit of grace to Candace. I think you're going to talk about how close she was with Charlie. Maybe not, maybe she was, but I do see a little bit of this as, someone who's grieving a loss of what she says is a close friend, and she wants answers. And so I understand from that perspective why to go down this path, and we all want answers, and we're grieving. And literally never met the guy, but I was texting with lots of people this week. It feels like losing a friend. Like it's a supernatural thing that God is just doing and awakening. And so I do kind of understand that from that perspective. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with conclusions. It's not excluding or it's not excusing conclusions that do not follow for what the evidence says. But I do want to say, like, at least a little grace. I understand the frustration, and that's for all of us. But at the same time, we got to be responsible with conclusions that we draw with what follows naturally from what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And just let me know. I know you need to leave, Ryan, so let me know when you need to hop off. But this is Charlie Kirk. This is a recent statement he made about Jewish financiers in the States and where their money has been going recently in America. He starts by, but here's what I love about Charlie Kirk is he actually gives the disclaimer that's needed. He starts by saying he is not talking about Jews in general. He says, I'm not talking about all Jews. This does not apply to all Jews. He said, but he's noticed some of the top Jewish financiers have been moving their money around and beginning to fund some of the things in the States that Charlie didn't believe in. That's what he's saying. He's making this statement. He's saying they used to be putting their money in the right spot. And he's noticed some of them are putting it somewhere else. So there's a shred of evidence there. Here's a clip of Charlie, and Candace actually played this one, obviously. And he's talking about somebody, possibly Mossad, being behind the whole Epstein ordeal. So Charlie's obviously was doing a little bit of research there. He did start talking about that. But man, here's my thought on Mossad is that, like, people are like, if you support Israel, you've got to support Mossad. And I'm like, do you support the CIA? You know what I mean?
Wow,
I'm
that's
like,
a good point.
American, and I support America, but that doesn't mean I have to trust the CIA. You know,
that's where you go. Oh yeah, never mind.
Yeah,
okay.
It's
I'm a little embarrassed by that statement. Can I take that back?
Right, and Charlie, I think Charlie kind of understood that same concept, because here he is talking about Netanyahu and anti-Semitism in this clip. If he says, if you call everyone an anti-Semite, if they don't take a puritanic view of the Netanyahu government, it's bad for everyone. So he's saying, just because someone criticizes something the Israeli government does specifically, that doesn't make them an anti-Semite, but he's trying to distinguish the two. And he even asks a Jewish person sitting in the audience right there, he says, what do you think? And they reply with saying, criticism of my government is out of love for my country. It's not because I hate my country. It's not because I hate Jews. He's saying it's because I love my country, you know, and I want what's best for my country. And, you know, we here in America, we believe the same thing. Whatever, you know, country viewers are watching from, you probably believe the same thing. If you love your country, you know, you're not criticizing your government because you hate your country. It's because you love your country and you want what's best for the people there. So I think the same thing applies here. Same thing applies with our CIA, all that. But was he actually a supporter of Israel? Well, let's look at the evidence. So this is something Benjamin Netanyahu shared, and obviously he's, you know, trying to get on the good side of Charlie, you know, in the public eye right now. So of course he's sharing that. But Charlie Kirk was a true friend of Israel. Rest in peace. In this clip, Charlie Kirk does say, I'm a huge supporter of the Holy Land and up against the terrorist organizations, Hezbollah and the Palestinian Authority. So he makes it very clear that right there, what he believed. And now I will say, because we're trying to be very fair, there's Candace Owens comments past the vibe check comment right there underneath. Y'all can see her responding to that.
I got to run. So I wish I could stay and finish to flesh this out. If I finish what I'm doing, maybe I'll jump back in, but what I got going on, but thank you. We'll chat soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to continue this thing without Ryan. Hopefully it's at least half as good as it would have been. All right. But what I do want to say about this, though, is, you know, to be honest and transparent about it, is that this could have been an older clip. I'm just going to say that. Could have been an older clip, right? But let's look at a few other things. Charlie with Candace talking about Netanyahu. Here's a clip of them. Again, could have been an older clip. Probably was, since we're going to get into evidence of how close they were and whether they were seen together over the last few years in a little bit. Tucker says, Charlie told me in private that he absolutely hated Netanyahu. And it's like, ooh, interesting, because that kind of flies in the face of what Charlie says in this clip. About Netanyahu, he said he's special. He's a special dude. He's everything a leader should be, right? But oh man, I'm not a behavior analysis, you know, or a body language analysis. He does gulp really big right after he says that. I'm just gonna say, I don't know. You know, again, I'm a supporter of Israel. I am. Okay, I believe that as a Christian, I believe the Bible calls me to be a supporter of Israel, but that doesn't mean that I have to like Netanyahu. That doesn't mean I have to support the specific things he's doing, right? So there it is. Okay. But this could have been an older clip as well. He could have changed his mind since then, right? Here's another one. TPUSA official says that it wasn't Israel. So Laura Loomer posted, I'm not going to say who because they asked me not to, but a high-level TPUSA official told me in an emotional phone call that the TPUSA has asked those who are pushing the lie that Israel killed Charlie Kirk to stop, and they won't stop. So here's my point with raising this, showing this message is those closest to Charlie who worked with him every single day, which would a high-level TPUSA official would have been there working with him day to day. They would have known exactly what pressures Charlie was being faced with. They would have known exactly his views on Israel. And if they think that Israel had nothing to do with it, that's pretty good evidence, I would say, that they believe Charlie was not in danger from Israel. That's what that's what you can conclude from that. Here's another. You might not like Ted Cruz, He's probably not everybody's favorite, and that's all okay. But just from the stance of people saying, hey, this is what Charlie told me before he passed away. Same thing Tucker and Candace are saying. He says, I'm getting really tired of Tucker and his cronies falsely claiming Charlie agreed with me that Israel is terrible. And the problem in America is all the Jews. And he said, I knew Charlie well. And indeed, the very last conversation we had was how deeply concerned he was about the rising toxic wave of anti-Semitism on the right. So that's a pretty strong statement there. If Charlie really believed that, and that was the last thing he said to Ted Cruz, that's pretty strong. And if that's true, I wish Ted Cruz I wish there was some evidence. I wish it was a text conversation that he could show, whatever. You can choose to believe him or not. Okay. So let's look at a few of the arguments. I want to dive a little bit deeper. I want to break down a couple of Candace's arguments. Okay. Now I've said she brought some pretty good points. She brought some pretty good facts. I think she's got something going with the text messages. A lot of the things she brings, she's very intelligent. She does her research. She does her homework. But I think sometimes there are some points in her arguments that are not 100% solid. I'm going to break a few down here. You can decide if you agree with me or not. If not, that's fine. Hopefully we can still be friends. But in this episode, they were lying about Charlie Kirk. Right here, she uses the Catholicism argument. Okay, she insinuates that Charlie was converting to Catholicism. That's what she insinuates. She says right before he died, the last couple months of his life, he was praying the rosary and kept going to mass, and was going to mass before he died. Now, I believe Charlie's wife is Catholic, if I'm not wrong, or at least was. I don't know where she is now. But if that's true, then maybe he was just going with his wife because that would be the right thing to do, right? In most people's opinions. So maybe that was the reason why. But also, she says he just needed to make that one last step to convert, right? And she uses it to support her claim that he was changing a lot of his views in his life, right? So she says he was on the verge of converting to Catholicism. He was praying the rosary, he's going to mass, and she's saying he was that's evidence that he was changing a lot of things in his life. One of those things being his views on Israel, all that kind of stuff. But was he converting to Catholicism? Well, let's look at the evidence. Okay, so I said this is the deep dive. We're going to look at all the evidence on both sides. On July 22nd of 2025, less than 2 months before his assassination, Charlie Kirk shared his thoughts on Catholicism. What does he have to say? This is less than 2 months. This is on his channel. He said, I have some big disagreements with Catholicism. This is literally 2 months ago. He says, here's my 3 main disagreements. Number 1 is the Pope and the Vatican, all of that, how that goes down. His second point was Mariology. He disagreed with Catholics on Mariology and Mary's role. And then transubstantiation was his third. Okay. Those are the 3 main big points that most Protestants disagree with Catholics on. I'm just going to say that. Okay. As a Protestant myself. Now I have friends who are Catholic. I'm not anti-Catholic, right? But I do disagree on some of the things, just like these points that Charlie Kirk brought up. Okay. So I think that's pretty good evidence that he was not converting to Catholicism. That 2 month ago video of him saying that, pretty good evidence. Here's another argument that she makes, the friendship argument. Like people have seen the quotes of Candace saying, Charlie was my best friend. Me and Charlie were really good friends, that kind of stuff. But it's weird. I'm just going to say this, y'all. I'm just going to say this. I feel like this is where Candace is not telling the full truth. I'm just going to say it. That's my feeling. There's a gut feeling for you that may or may not be true, right? But there is some evidence to it as well. And I'm like, if this is true, I hope that she backtracks. If it's true that she's not being fully transparent, I hope she backtracks on this. Okay. Candace Owens unmasks fake Kirk text bombshell. This is Stephen Gardner. In this video, he references Patrick Bet-David. I know a lot of people that like Candace Owens got really mad at Patrick Bet-David about making a video about her recently. But I'm saying, hey, look at the evidence on both sides. Don't just judge. Don't just jump to conclusions without looking at the evidence. Okay. But in that video, he says that Candace has not been seen with Charlie for nearly 2 years. She also got quietly dismissed. I'm going to pull this up. Candace got quietly dismissed from TPUSA, according to a board member. And this is the board member here, Eric Bowling, for going too hard into hatred and conspiracy theories. And what he says here is Charlie Kirk stopped talking to Candace Owens after she lost the plot and conspiracy theories. They had a quiet breakup that he didn't publicize. Charlie unfollowed her on X. They haven't been on speaking terms in years. He's on the board of TPUSA. He should have direct knowledge of whether Charlie Kirk is on speaking terms with Candace or not. And this is what he says. So when Candace says, that Charlie Kirk was her best friend, I'm like, Candace, that doesn't look true to me, and maybe she feels like he was, and hey, I get that sometimes where I'm like, hey, I haven't talked to this person in years, but I feel like they're still my best friend. Maybe she really feels that. Okay. So I'm not saying that she doesn't. But that's just what the evidence points to. Okay. She also makes the gut feeling argument. I'm going to bring this up. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to bring it up. Okay. We're just looking at the evidence. Okay. She says, I've got a gut feeling that there were two people there, right? And that there was another shooter. And she says, just trust me. I don't know, but I know, right? It's a gut feeling. But I'm wondering if Candace, if her gut feelings are as trustworthy as she says they are. I'm just asking the question, okay? I'm just wondering. Bridget McCrone announces scientific photo evidence to prove she's not a man. Candace snaps back. Listen, I'm not saying this is final. I'm not saying this is authority, right? But Brigitte and Emmanuel they've submitted evidence to the court saying scientific and photo evidence, that's DNA evidence and photo evidence, essentially trying to prove that she's a woman. Okay. Now I know a lot of people believe she's a man. Some people don't, whatever. I'm not trying to say either way, but I'm just saying the evidence has been submitted and we're going to have to wait, and they're going to go through a process of confirming the evidence, confirming the DNA trail, from one official to another, one doctor to another, whatever it is, that has to be verified in the court. But at the same time, it's not necessarily looking great for Candace right now if this is true. Okay, let's say that if this is true, the story is not completely wrapped up, but just wondering, is her gut feeling as good as people think it is? Here's a question. What if the text messages were faked, like Candace says they were, right? And I think she's on to some stuff, y'all. I think that, in this episode, I'm going to pull up the other one. In this episode, she really does make some really good points. Okay. Who ordered the hit on Charlie Kirk? She makes some great points about the text messages. Okay. And they're weird. There's a lot. The main points being, why would a 22-year-old write this way? Right. Second main point being, they seem to include all of the condemning bits of evidence that they would need, almost like a confession, in order for the FBI to wrap this up real fast. Right. It does seem weird, but here's my question I'm going to ask. Okay. I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm presenting, because what Candace did was she said, okay, because of that, now this must be the way it is. And it's like, what if it's a different reason that the text messages were faked? That's my question. One reason could be that the two guys had planned to have a text message conversation and they already knew what they were going to say ahead of time. Why would they do that? To clear the second guy, to clear his partner. If they sent these messages and then the FBI could look at them and go, 100%, you're off the hook, right? And so it's like, what if that was the plan? There's just another option. I'm not saying that was what it was, but I'm just saying there's other reasons why it could be faked. Okay. Just saying it doesn't necessarily mean it was a federal conspiracy. Okay. And hey, I'm going to say this. I don't trust the Fed any more than you do. Okay. I'll just say that. So but I want to see the evidence. That's what I'm saying. I want to see the evidence. Here's some more evidence. Okay. The body language. Now, this is a different kind of evidence, but I think it's worth bringing into the equation. Body language analysis of Charlie Kirk's shooter at first hearing. The body language guy brings up some really good points. And his main point is that the shooter is showing signs of contempt. Now, if you don't know what contempt is, it is a lack of contempt, pushes all the other emotions back that normally would be there because of the hatred that's out front, that's risen to the top. It is a lack of care. I don't care anymore. That's how angry I am, right? He hears the name Erica, and there's no show of shame, but there is show of contempt, according to his analysis. Okay. Expert body language analysis. Now, he could be wrong, saying, yeah, sure. But evidence is evidence and it needs to be weighed, right? He hears the name Erica in this hearing. There's no show of shame, just contempt. And he says, based on his analysis, he says there is a lot of hatred there. Okay. So the question being like, would this guy actually do it? Could he actually do it? is there motivation? I think the body language, if you consider this real evidence, which I do, it shows a very strong motivation, right? That he had a very strong motivation. Now, does that mean that somebody else wasn't behind it? No, that's not evidence to say that somebody else couldn't have been behind it, right? But it is evidence of him actually being the shooter. Okay. He says this points to him possibly being the right guy. And then when they mention the death penalty, he just shakes his head yes, as if, and it's the response from somebody who knows what they did. And he says, I see him as if he has already accepted his fate. Now, if you weren't the shooter and you knew it, why would you, it's like you wouldn't accept your fate there. You wouldn't have that contempt. You would have fear. You would have like a feeling of injustice, all these, and that's not what we see, right? And so it seems likely that he was the shooter, at least based on this evidence. Other evidence that they found, Tyler's DNA matched on the site. Tyler Robinson's DNA matched to the scene of Charlie Kirk's killing. FBI says also, if you want a raw piece of meat with an ice cube on top, there's that. But now some people will say, well, if the Fed's lying about other stuff, they could be lying about that too. Okay. But the quote unquote Fed, the deep state, whatever, it's not all encompassing. It's not everybody. Okay. So not everybody in the government is crooked. It would take a lot of people working together to pull a stunt like this off. If everyone in every single department and every single spot was crooked, and that's just not the case. Like, it would have to be a certain number of people working together to get this done, right? But not everybody. So they would have to somehow get all of this to work together without being able to control every little part of it. And that sounds difficult. I'm just going to say that sounds difficult, especially DNA evidence being matched to the scene. At the very least, he was there. That's what I would say that says. Okay. Also, here's another bit of evidence. According to court documents, Tyler Robinson's parents said, and this is their testimony, why would they incriminate their own son if they didn't think he really did it? Or if he didn't admit to them that he really did it, right? They asked their son why he shot Charlie, to which he replied, there's too much evil and the guy spreads too much hate. Again, showing the motivation, but also the parents incriminating their own son if they didn't really believe 100% that he did it. Doesn't make any sense, right? So I'd say saying that somebody else is a shooter, it's the evidence does not point, in my opinion, does not point in that direction. Now I'm going to let you make up your own mind. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something, right? It doesn't feel like the evidence points in that direction though. Here's my conclusion. Could there be a larger plot going on? Sure. Absolutely. Right. Is it the most likely scenario based on the evidence? I'm going to let you make up your own mind. I've shared enough opinions today. I've hopefully not shared too many and hopefully shared enough evidence that this has been thought-provoking. Is it possible for there to be donors pressuring Charlie Kirk and them not to be associated with his death? Absolutely. Absolutely. Is the opposite also possible? Sure. Okay. But we need to see the evidence. We need to see the string of evidence. I don't want to accuse anybody of something as heinous as this without proper evidence. And I think that is where I disagree with Candace Owens. That's where I diverge is, let's see the evidence, right? Before we jump to the conclusion. The evidence she's shown so far, pretty dang good, I would say. And if you haven't watched it, you can go watch for yourself. And you can see we did a breakdown here in this video. Pretty dang good, okay? But it doesn't get us from point A to point B, or A to Z. It only gets us to B, A, B, C, D, E, or whatever. It doesn't get us all the way there. So there's that. Y'all let me know what you think. Let me know if I was fair to Candace. Let me know if I did a fair breakdown. Maybe I didn't. Maybe you feel like I didn't. Let me know, because we're trying to be gracious and unbiased if we can possibly be. So if I can do better next time, let me know, and I'll try to improve on that. But yeah, there it is. There's the big breakdown. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your weekend. God bless, and we will see you next. Gold is not just a backup plan if the world falls apart. It's an investment opportunity that could set you up for generations. There's never really a bad time to invest in gold, but you want to make sure you have the right guide. And that is where Genesis Gold Group shines. Whether you are a first-time buyer or a seasoned investor, their trusted expertise and competitive pricing makes them an easy choice. They offer tangible assets in case of emergencies, but they can also design the perfect IRA just for you. And they'll even cut through all that confusing red tape from the IRS. We at Filibusted love the genius design of the Prepper Bar, which breaks up into sections like a chocolate bar. But if you prefer a more high security insured gold storage, they have that too. And unlike Fort Knox, the gold is actually there and 100% owned by you. Genesis Gold Group is a safe, simple, and convenient way to invest. Visit filibustedgold.com today for your free investment guide from Genesis Gold Group.